Muted Jules.
Hello and welcome again to Autistic Radio, where you will always find us 5:55 on a Sunday. In a short while, Harry will take over and curate a conversation around the Facebook page that he puts together from all those different wonderful people advocating and sharing in the autistic community. We have our own opportunity to advocate and put forward our own experience of autism in a series of lectures, conversations, presentations, call them what you will. Our next one is Liverpool, where we will be speaking at the Restraint Reduction Network, a worthy cause I think we can all support, reducing the need to put people in care situations under restraint should affect the autistic community. We're offering to do Vox Pops with them so they can talk about their own experiences as professionals, effectively giving them a platform, and there may also be autistic people at that event who may wish to take a platform for themselves also. Harry and myself will make sure that we represent at least part of autistic experience. We're going to also give them a couple of opportunities to use workshops, and maybe the provocative titles of the two workshops will explain where we're coming from. Workshop title number 1: Using audio recording to enable the inclusion of autistic voices. So we'll talk about the alternative model that we have here at Autistic Radio, but also try to help professionals to listen to us better, hear us better, and give us opportunity to speak out better with a few tips. The second title: Why do they hate us? And more importantly, how to change the situation. That's workshop title 2. Now, there's an antagonism that is obvious between any profession that has its root in the science of behaviourism associated with ABA. PBS comes as a cousin. So we want to speak with them and describe what some of the objections are and help them through the minefield so that we get a better situation. More understanding equals better situation for autistic people. So that's all a bit controversial, going into the lion's den, speaking in these ways. Can I ask the group if they're happy with what I'm proposing there?
No quibbles here.
I'm absolutely fine. I look forward to the experience and the opportunity.
This is a steering meeting that we're having here. All fine with me, says GR. All fine with me, says Robbie. Nicholas has no objection. So I'm going to say that obviously I'm proposing this, and the chair's seconding this. So we're happy that this is a democratic move forward from the group, yeah? Lovely. So, Harry, please, take the mic away. Let's have the main event of this evening.
Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 20th of July, 2025. And this is where we discuss the Facebook post on the Facebook page for Autistic Radio. And the first post shared this evening is from Swan Autism Scotland, which is a community page Swan is an autistic-led charity run by and for autistic women and non-binary people since 2012. And what we've shared is an invitation that they received to go to the Royal Garden Party by the Scottish Government. So it says the following. In recognition of Swan's work, Chief Executive Officer Lindsay McAdam was nominated by the Scottish Government to attend the Royal Garden Party earlier this month. And Lindsay said it was a tremendous honour to be nominated to attend the Royal Garden Party and meet the King. As the only autistic-led charity run by and for autistic women, girls and non-binary people in Scotland, this is an important recognition of the value and necessity of Swan's work. What's your thoughts?
I think it's something we can wholeheartedly support. We're always seeing the post from Swan here and seeing that the work that they're doing. To have somebody from the organisation to be picked as a representative and then given a platform and ability, something that they can use hopefully during fundraising, is great. It's an autistically led situation, and it's receiving recognition. What's not to love about this?
Just to add to it briefly, the Royal Garden Party was at the Palace of Holyrood House, and it was part of Royal Week, which is each July each year, and it's an opportunity for many people that work in the community and other sectors to go to that as a token. Don't want to say, the token's a bit brutal to say, but it's like an honour or appreciation of the hard work that's done. So it's nice to see this, sort of post and sharing, because I've seen it, all over in the community, different ways, and it's just nice to see, the autistic kind of body being represented, and for someone to go along and enjoy the experience as well.
So the Scottish Government proposed Swan. I was just wondering how you get on that list.
Well, over a decade of quietly getting on with it, doing service, designing programs, creating a charity, I reckon they've done the groundwork.
I think basically what it is Swan obviously have worked along and been funded, I think, in the past, possibly by the Scottish Government. So the Scottish Government's well aware of the work that Swan has done and has taken the opportunity, to nominate them because they well know them through their work in the past and, of course, present.
I think it's quite interesting here because we don't have another organisation that is an APO that is as embedded within the current structure as Swan. We have Autistic Knowledge Development, and they have been recipients of government money for their programs, but they've had to really prove themselves. So that's the second one. There's something called ARG, but that's really quite concentrated in the Highlands. We have an organisation in Edinburgh, but they shy away from becoming a charity. They have done various things to promote autistic identity in the region over a long time, but they're not in any way supported by the government or the professionals even. They're almost at odds with them. To some degree that's the same for Aurora Consulting, though they have in the past managed to get government money. They're really rather outside the fold. No, there doesn't seem to be another major initiative from autistic folk that gets anything like, and it's down to the professionalism of Swan over the years. It has to be.
Is this the first time an autistic group has been invited to an event like this? I mean, it is high recognition, isn't it?
That's not true to say the texter in the text to say that there's no support for autistic people from government in England. There's enormous amounts of money are spent by the government south of the border. It's whether they are, as that texter I know, find them to be appropriate for the autistic community. And what actually happens is a great deal of money is wasted on things that have no value for us.
The next post is from Autistic Revolution. It's a community organisation. Autistic Revolution magazine is an employment creating neurodivergent affirming spaces, creativity, education, well-being, and it's a magazine. I'll say it again actually. The next post is from Autistic Revolution, and it's a magazine from a community organisation, and it concentrates on employment, creating neurodivergent affirming places, employment, creating neurodivergent affirming spaces, creativity, education, well-being. And what they've shared is the following. Callum Brazo, aka Autistic Links, Empowerment, Collaboration and Community, and Jenny Loughran finally meet. Not through a Zoom call, there's been many, but in real life. Callum was one of the very first people to reach out to the original ovation of the creation of Autistic Revolution and will always be a part of its development. He is a passionate advocate and poet, doing some amazing work within Lincolnshire. And 3.5 years later, Jenny and Callum meet. Callum and I hit off straight away when he responded to the original community invitation, and it felt so strange actually seeing him in my hometown 3 years on. Waiting for Callum at the station and then finally spending time with him was so joyful. Two neurodivergent people who respect one another's work and have become friends and actually get to meet in real life. When you spend most of your time connecting with your community online, it feels surreal. So joyful, validating, bliss, Jenny. What's people's thoughts? What I got from the post is just, it actually reminded of myself meeting Jules in person for the first time after meeting online well before and being on a regular basis for quite some time. And it was, for me, it was a great occasion. I mean, Jules was coming down to me, to do some, some work on the laptop, etc. The equipment for the Autistic Radio, and it was just good to meet someone in person that you've got to know through online. And of course, you know what they look like, etc. But you always wonder if they look what you see online, because people do look a bit different because they're on a box, they're on, they're on a screen, and obviously they're going to look a bit different, I feel, when you meet them in real life. So that sort of kind of corresponded to me when reading that particular post. It's actually meeting people face to face who you've actually had a joyful kind of working relationship and friendship, I would say, and it's just nice to share that.
That's lovely, Harry. I get what you mean. I remember it as being quite unusual because we had known each other for quite a long time online, and then to put a face, and then we looked around the way that we'd been operating things, and none of us had met face to face at that point in time, I think, as well. So that just says something about creating tentative online contacts, then friendships, then allyships, and then eventually meeting somebody. It can all happen. It's a positive story out there. And the next thing after all these years is we're going to work together on this Vox Pops that we're presenting at the Liverpool conference. So that's yet another stage further, and it's all happened over really slowly over a period of time, step by step.
The next post is from Panda, who are a charity organisation, and Panda stands for Promoting Autism Neurodiversity Awareness. And what they've shared is regarding the Department on Welfare. What's DWP mean? I'll say it again.
Department Work and Pensions.
Right, okay. The next post is from Panda, who are a charity organisation, and Panda stands for Promoting Autism Neurodiversity Awareness. And what they've shared is about the current changes from the UK government regarding to the Department of Work and Pensions, and change of benefits, universal credit, personal independent payment, changes through things, all that kind of thing. And what is shared and what it says is, in their words, they say, shocking new evidence has exposed just how broken the UK's benefits system has become. The DWP boss, Liz Kendall, claims that universal credit gives disabled people a perverse incentive not to work. Yet a damning parliamentary report just released finds the Department Work and Pensions is not only failing to protect vulnerable claimants, but is actively causing harm. The report highlights a lack of safeguarding, stories of avoidable deaths, and a growing crisis for disabled and chronically ill people forced to interact with a system accused of neglect and cruelty. Urgent change is needed now. What's people's thoughts on this post and the current situation in the UK? Just to add that the link is from the Canary newsletter.
I've had so many nightmarish encounters with the DWP, and I don't actually have to deal with that anymore, and I'm grateful for that. I could literally write a book on this.
I think
cut off, Robbie. You're on mute, Robbie, if you're speaking.
Many of the jobs have been replaced with cheap import mechanisation, AI and self-checkouts. I couldn't even get support to keep a voluntary job. Now I've had many. I could write a book on what I've gone through with DWP and what they put me through. And if someone without a disability struggles to keep work, how is someone like me going to keep work? And with me living in a village, if I don't have transport, that means it's going to be very difficult to work.
Yes, I can understand what's been said so far. I mean, I've had general, in recent times, the experience has not been too bad. And the reason I'm saying that, because I'm not going to say it's perfect, because it's certainly not. There has been kind of worries in recent times in terms of, like, universal credit is what's been spoke about in the post and in the article shared. You know, it's the changeover, you know, from what I had before, which was employment support allowance. And there was a time where I was kind of fearing what the change was going to be like, because the way that they gave sort of matter of fact sort of instructions or information, it sounds like it's going to be a nightmare to go through. And it turned out, you know, thankfully, that it wasn't as bad as I was fearing. But you hear so many stories about, you know, people get put through a hard time and people being made to feel guilty for seeking benefit that they're entitled to. I don't like that word entitled, but, you know, that's the only word I can think of at the moment. It's like, you know, it's that money that's what it's for. And there's this big kind of spin, and people know that happens about benefit cheats and things like that. And there's this sort of kind of really poor attitude by media, you know, towards people that are on benefits and why they're on benefits, and how we're in this sort of lazy society that we have now, that people don't want to work, and going on benefits is the easy life, which I totally find absolutely shocking kind of language to put on people that are, you know, on benefits, because it's not an easy life. It's like a support mechanism, which isn't that great. And what they're doing now, and what they have been doing for years, is like they make you feel guilty. They make you feel bad. They make you feel inferior. Then they put things in place that are inadequate that's supposed to help you. So how it's not workable. It's a system that's not workable, but it's easy to target, easy people to blame when people like in work and people generally kind of complain about things are unfair and why they work in this hard job, and, you know, taxes and, you know, all the stuff that the media like to stir. It's just like they like to pick on people on benefits like they are the problem, which in my opinion, is not the case.
I've got to go through the whole process again after the money of it was left for my parents has gone. And I'll probably have to justify where the money went. If for the care I have to pay for, I won't get that through social care. So it's going to be a real problem, because social care provide what they want you to have, not what you actually need. So where's the money going to come from? Because I struggled the short bit of time I was on between losing my dad and his settlement from his estate being sorted out.
Reading the article here, I was wondering when they were maybe going to start pondering the issue of like the workhouse in Victorian times. And there it is. I mean, the canary, I don't know if the canary is all that valid a news outlet, but it's got some info here.
What the benefit is now is basically the workhouse without the building.
Well, that certainly is the case for other people.
The
On you go,
workhouse
Raven.
would be, sorry, the workhouse would be, forcing you to work for your benefits. I mean, basically the underlying accusation here is that people are lying in their benefits claims.
Yeah, time and time again, when they've evaluated they've found that only a tiny percentage of money is falsely claimed under disability. I don't think that the majority of people who are currently unemployed and receiving disability benefits are better off working. I think the likelihood is that the cost of working is too much to make the loss of benefits, even at the low rate that they are, cover the cost of going to work, the necessary thing to. But some people manage it, and those people who are part of the disabled category and who live that heroic life, it's akin to having a family and working at the same time. You've got a huge job just being disabled, and then you've got another huge job on top of it. Very much like a working mother in some ways. Just because some people can be heroes doesn't make it appropriate for everybody. And particularly when we're talking about the area of disability that's in the mental disability or mental illness sphere, those people need looking after, caring for, and whilst it might be a possibility that there are a group of those people who would benefit from being outside the house in some kind of format, it's ridiculous to think that it's a large percentage. The majority of people need a lot more support and understanding before they could get to be a fully economic attribute for a business, and that's what it works out as. Businesses do not want to employ people unless their value works out, and not everyone can be a hero like that. Some of us don't manage it.
The article itself states from their quotations that the DWP themselves admit that they have failed on work. Not on benefits, but on work. In a society that can provide quality of work, valued work for people, or even create work itself for people in situations of certain remoteness or incapacity. Just to say generally you should work is not making any kind of logical sense. It's like, but I think the onus is on the person to find their own work. I think that's a social contract, but it's a kind of failing society that can't really provide that even for your own decision-making process.
I think you and I differ actually there, Raymond, because I don't think it is part of the social contract for somebody who is from this nation, this country, to work. I don't think it's necessary for somebody to they've already had their right to roam taken away from them, the right to make their own house in the forest. They've already had the enclosure. The social contract is much more weighted in the other direction for me. It is the right of us to have the access to fulfilling employment that creates an income commensurate with the standard of living that you would expect from the first world country like ourselves. And that is not on offer to people. Work actually puts people more in poverty in some situations than it puts them out of poverty. And the opportunities for advancement are no longer there. They're from a different era.
Many of the jobs are zero-hour contracts and agency. Well, they don't pay when you're not working. There's no obligation for them to provide you with work. The obligation is one way. The bills don't stop coming.
Yeah, the attitude is all wrong. And it's the word work as well, because they're not talking about work. They're basically talking about being employed. And that's different, because many autistic people do work. And the word work as well, and it's been talked about before, like parenting is work, doing things in the home is work. You know, the kind of routine things that you're supposed to be doing, like cleaning the home or, go shopping and things like that's work. It's just the attitude of being employed, and if you're not employed, you're inferior or you're lazy. It's all kinds of words that just to put you down. I just find it disgraceful, just the setup of it, especially as you know that to become employed is very difficult anyway, and it's you don't need to be disabled or autistic or in a certain kind of different way, to have difficulty. It happens to a lot of the population, if not most. It's just the way society. I just find it so. There's just so much pressure on different people and certain things, and I'm including employers in this. It's just that it's so set up and it's so lopsided, and so there's so many barriers for people to come through. It's like, and you're talking about, as everybody knows, is when you get into work, you end up being less. You end up in poverty yourself, because being in work you have to pay for more and do for more, and it's like a lot of people in work actually need to get additional benefits just so they can live. You get things like food banks and clothes banks and all that for many families out there, because their work, their employment doesn't actually pay them enough, but it's still legal enough for them to be allowed to do so. So there's just so much out there that it just, what frustrates me about that is it's like they make out if you're not in work, if you're not in employment, you're lazy and you're inferior, and that's just totally wrong. I just know that it will put a lot of people down, because it did it to me at one time. It doesn't do it to me now, even though it still angers me. But it was a time where I felt really bad and guilty for a long time because I wasn't in employment, and the kind of strategies from all the governments that we've had, over the last 20 years, it's just that same sort of attitude. There's never been that enough support there. And when they put support in, they take it away because of budget cuts. So it's their fault as well.
I worked for 10 years at a well-known charity shop, 5 days a week. Another 10 years for 2 mornings a week for my friend's shop. That was voluntary, not apart from 1 hour. And I was carer for my parents for 20 years, doing most of their food shopping and preparing and cooking a meal almost every day. I had 1 day off a month from cooking the meal.
Yeah, I think for every one of these articles, we should be challenging the authorities to actually make this society work. I mean, they're going on about work, but is the society working? You know?
It's the straw man. The reason this country is in trouble is because of, and over 30 years ago it was Peter Lilly demonizing single mothers. Then it was Eastern Europeans coming in, taking all the jobs and taking benefits. Then it was people coming over in small boats, and now it's the sick and disabled. They need to sort out the problems and not make us look like we're the problem.
Who's
Yeah,
next?
but it's a huge. Sorry.
And who's next? And if you look at what's going on here now, it's exactly what happened in Germany.
This is a huge story. There's huge vested interest in maintaining this kind of society. It's economics to a certain extent, but it's also power. And it's like we are a lucky country in the last century that we actually had a welfare state, and we had real positive, progressive politics creating a better society, and that has been demolished since the 70s. Now, I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but that's just history. And I suppose those people are not going to let these concessions come back unless people, get a wee bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, a safe word here, politically engaged, I suppose.
No one's looking at the excess profits of some of these energy companies, water companies, and the like. And some of these people well-off people paying a fair amount of tax.
See, that's another one with the power companies. If you even want to boycott them, you can't. You're almost penalised for withdrawing your consumption of the product. You try, switching off your electricity supply. It's extremely difficult. You've got to keep it on, I think, legally. Maybe I can be corrected there.
Well, of course, what this article, what the post has done in the article itself, of course, is it opens up, that there's a whole kind of scope of other stuff that we've kind of touched on. And we've touched on, obviously, the energy companies there. And it's just basically saying that the way that the society that we live in, UK, although it's better in certain other countries and certain nations in terms of looking after people, it's certainly got its issues. And it's something that's always got to be highlighted, because the attitude of the blame game, which has already been kind of talked about briefly, it's like they pick on certain people in society as a sort of distraction technique to take away from the actual issues and what's causing the issues. And it's just so frustrating because of the hate and all that gets, generated from that. And when I say hate, it's not just people hating people; it's like people actually hating themselves. It's horrible. But there is, movements out there that are kind of fighting against it, in certain ways. So, it's not all doom and gloom. And what the government has kind of done in terms of what the UK government has been doing or proposing, they have backtracked in many ways in certain things when they've been contested by people in the community, by certain groups, pressure groups, organisations, saying, "Look, wait a minute, you're going too far here," and then they backtrack because public opinions actually went against them. It doesn't always work that way, but it shows you that people can make change, and it's not just about keeping your head down. And it's like you can fight back a little. Of course, it's a hard slog.
And it's usually consumer power, Harry, yeah.
Indeed. The next post is from Actually Autistic, who is an educational consultant, late diagnosed, passionate advocate for diagnosed and undiagnosed autistic children and young people. And what they've shared is the following. I'm seriously considering a Facebook timeout. It feels like Russian roulette every time I come on here as to whether I'll see something positive and uplifting or something toxic and hurtful. The online space seems to be overcrowded with everyone's opinions on everything. Most are largely unsolicited, and so much of it is ill-informed. If your viewpoint differs from someone else's, you often find yourself vilified. If you correct someone with straight-up facts, you're met with vitriol. I love Facebook for connecting with family, friends, and like-minded people, for being a great way of raising awareness and fundraising for good causes. I like silly and witty posts and reels. But running the gauntlet of spite and general negativity in order to access those gems sometimes feels too much. No one thing has happened to make me feel this way. It's just the general vibe of online spaces that make me wonder about the impact it has on my well-being. So, if I go quiet on Facebook, it's cause I'm conducting my own little experiment in emotional well-being. What's people's thoughts on this? I know that we've discussed similar before.
Specifically related to Facebook, right? I never have this experience of bad vibes, because I think it's because I don't do public posts. I'm only really relating to people in my friend list. And so I'm not really relating to community in a very general way. I think some of these people or posters are involving themselves in wide open groups with maybe global kind of input. And so that's like the Wild West, really, and to me quite a frightening environment. So I think it's just the way you use social media as indicates your experience.
I've had as much bad experience and toxic posts from friends as I have had from people I don't know, and it's not just Facebook; it's out in the community. There's so much toxic stuff going on about because of the media that wherever you go, it's
Are these friends your real friends, Robbie? I mean, not real in the real world, but like, people on Facebook can have friends that are just people who friended them. You don't really know these people. They're virtual kind of people. But if you've had negative stuff from people you actually know and like, then that's sad.
I've had stuff from people sharing horrible stuff that I actually know and like. They're just taking up a lot of this horrid politics. This country.
Yeah, Facebook is a bit of a minefield, and I use Facebook quite a lot. Obviously the Autistic Radio page and other pages, and obviously my own profile. And there is a lot of toxic stuff out there. There's a lot of things that are deliberately put on, like articles or just memes or whatever, that's deliberately there to wind people up. There's pictures being taken of people that then it describes it as something it's definitely not. And sometimes and people tend to be braver online when it comes to negative comments. I mean, I've seen it, in all certain ways, like people describing, a restaurant that they've used or a service that they've used of some kind. It's like really brutal And sometimes the language is foul as well. It's just people feel safe in doing that, which seems a strange thing to say. Although there are many people that would do it to your face and they would do it like speaking in conversation, but mostly most people, it seems, save it for like Facebook, and not just Facebook, but social media, somewhere that you can type and text can be read. And Facebook in itself, gets kind of caught up in all that. There's a lot of stuff on Facebook that I like. It's very beneficial. It's good for sharing information. But then there's a negative side, which many people use to their advantage. Some people just want to cause trouble as well for no other reason that they enjoy it and it's like a hobby to them. So it can be toxic and it can be tiring. It can be very tiring. And I've had many experiences of feeling that way. And what I do is I don't kind of log off in terms of for a couple of days or anything. What I do is I just put the phone down, the laptop off, or if the laptop's on, just use something else and just take a break from it. Because sometimes it doesn't need to be something direct, but sometimes there's just so much going on, you just need to switch off of it because it can be really emotionally draining, especially if it's all negative stuff.
There's a lot of hateful stuff dressed up as patriotism, and I just have to hide posts, unfollow people because I find it so difficult.
I do appreciate the dad jokes that you post sometimes, Harry. They really cheer me up.
Yeah, that's part of my sort of kind of coping strategy as well, is all the kind of serious stuff that I might share or I might just read. I don't share on my Facebook. It's just something just to kind of lighten the mood a wee bit, especially if I've been down at my dad's house and he watches the news and it's like hour-long news. It's like he watches the Scottish news for half an hour and then it's like the British wide global news afterwards. So it's an hour and a half of mostly bad news. And it's just like it's good to come home and actually, or even just do it while he's sitting watching it. Do it on my phone, just share those daft wee jokes and all that, and just lighten the moods. It's because, as I know what I've said already. So yeah, I do like sharing it.
News is a really suspicious thing, isn't it? I mean, you said it's all bad news. It's like there isn't really any good news, is there? I mean, good news doesn't sell, does it? And it's almost like news in the media is like a control medium, you know?
I think there's something about the internet and autistic people, and it's not really recognised. Some of the worst behaviour on the social media sites feels very reminiscent of autistic people and the way they communicate. And my prejudice is that some of the worst pollution that's on the internet is actually perpetrated by autistic people who can't let things go, and make it a kind of keyboard warrior personality that they can escape into to give them a sense of control. A way in which they can bully other people as they have learnt the experience of being bullied, taking control. And it feels to me that some of the autistic spaces out there suffer from this kind of behaviour. But because it's patrolled, it's the rest of the world that's experiencing these individuals.
Do you think sometimes these autistic reactions online originate in a basic misunderstanding, perhaps? Like someone feels they've been misunderstood and then reacts badly and it becomes a kind of conflict?
I think the way that some people's natural way of communicating and conducting argument attracts the algorithm, the repetitiveness, the constant pecking away, and it attracts all the things that the algorithm looks for to sell eyeballs to advertisers. So it kind of is built in to some people's psyches. So they end up they're being rewarded constantly as well.
Yeah, the arguments usually take place within a very common kind of way of engaging in discussion. So I often feel like, if you're going to be misunderstood, then, take control of it, deliberately be misunderstood to a certain extent. I mean, what eventually happens is nobody really engages with you because they can't understand what you're saying. But, I kind of enjoy that.
I can see what Jules is meaning. There is a lot of people who feel they need to be very combative, especially autistic people, very defensive and lashing out, and that's the way that they construct an argument or construct a point. And the kind of language it's used, and sometimes many people actually do it in capital letters, which is looked upon as shouting. When you read it, as text. And there is people that something does happen and they're very resentful of what has happened, they feel unjust, and even if it's a misunderstanding, it just, they keeps it going and going and going, and because it's repetitive, as it's been said already, it gets picked up very easily and kind of sold, and because it's kind of bad and bad news sort of thing, it's highlighted and promoted in many ways for the algorithm and all that. So absolutely, a lot of autistic people, can be responsible for a lot of the toxic stuff that, is online, and it can just be basically from someone disagreeing with someone's point and them taking exception to that. The next post is from Aught in Sight, Aught in Mind, which is a personal blogs, the adventures of late diagnosed autistic human travelling through time, space, and psychological constructs, promoting autism acceptance one pun at a time. And it's a post that was originally posted on April 2019. And it's a quote it shared and some background information. And it says, "Do you know what is harder than telling a child they are autistic? Not knowing you are autistic." And what it says is, here's a thought from me being a late diagnosed autistic woman, mum of 2 autistic children. In our house, we speak about autism in a matter-of-fact way. We acknowledge differences, we acknowledge shared experiences, we acknowledge diversity, including neurodiversity. We talk about masking, unmasking. We talk about stimming. We talk about the frustration, confusion, overwhelm that arises from a pattern of behaviour being broken in a way that feels unfair. A broken pattern that can never be remedied. This might seem like a random example, but it was drawn from a very tearful conversation with my son a few minutes ago. Recency effect. We link these things to our artistic identities. We develop over time an understanding that lots of people don't have the same experience as us and might not understand these things. Not because these things are wrong, but because lots of people aren't autistic and lots of people don't know much about autism yet. We do this because in knowing ourselves, we can know our needs as a family and as individuals and move towards finding our artistic well-being, our flavour of flourishing. I know I'm talking about talking, and there are many autistics who don't talk in the way I am talking about. Neurodevelopmental divergence indeed results in a wide range of neurodevelopmental profiles. But please understand that the core message here still applies. Tiptoeing around autism and trying not to mention it gives the impression that autism is something wrong, something shameful, something to be feared and avoided. Matter of fact, open dialogue about autism within the family culture, coupled with developmentally appropriate information shared with children as they grow in age and readiness, can help develop a positive autistic identity and support mental health in the long term. Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. Dumbledore book, Hermione movie, but J.K. Rowling all round. What's people's thoughts on this stuff we can post?
I think I'm getting the sense that, some people might think it would be a really hard, sad thing to share with a child that they were autistic, and that this person's experience was like, she found it more difficult not knowing she was autistic. I think back a bunch of years in our house, it was just like we all had this realising, oh, we're all autistic. And it was a bit of a seismic shift in worldview, but made things a lot more comfortable and make an awful lot more sense. So I don't know, I don't see it as hard so much as kind of revelatory.
Yeah, the post is, that was shared is, back from 2019, so it was a bit of time ago. So thought-provoking and things are a bit different now, even like 6 years. But I just found it interesting because sometimes these things need to be repeated in many ways, even if it's put in a certain way like that. It's like autism isn't something wrong. Autism is something to learn about if it's within yourself or within a family member, including your children. And it's just the sort of attitude and the mindset. And I'm always keen on hearing about examples of positive mindsets on different things. And this is one of them.
Am I getting a sense here of there's like talking about autism and there's just being autistic?
I think I get a bit of a sense of what you're saying there, Ray. Just being autistic alongside other autistic people, noticing them being themselves naturally, I think is a very positive experience. I think you kind of absorb and understand and get community from that. Helps you to feel good about yourself, I think, as well. The talking about your own autism, for me, this brings up two versions of things. I think the real healthy attitude within your own house, within your own family, when you're recognising things in a family member, oneself, and having the ability to share that amongst a group of other autistic people in your own family is lovely. There is still also the interface between your family of weirdos and the rest of the world. So that's where we have difficulty navigating things often. I grew up in a family of weirdos, and I created a family of weirdos, and I'm still in a family of weirdos now. And I associate with other families of weirdos. So there's always a bit of compromise that happens when the interface between being quite comfortable with your own autistic identity as a group of weirdos and then the real world that hasn't changed much. There we go. It's the interface that's the issue.
The next post is from Pandas Online, who are an author promoting acceptance of neurodivergence and support. And they shared the following. Autism is just one part of the picture. Many autistic people also have co-occurring conditions that shape how they think, feel, and experience the world. Co-occurring conditions aren't extra labels. They give clarity. They explain experiences that autism alone doesn't cover, helping autistic people understand themselves better. This is why Neurobears includes polar bear to represent co-occurring conditions and help young people explore the full identity in a way that makes sense to them. There are so many other co-occurring conditions that are covered in Neurobears, so why not visit the website linked www.pandasonline.org. And what they're talking about is the picture that they've shared, and it touches on ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, sensory processing differences, and alexithymia. And that's some of the conditions, not all, of course, but some of the conditions that they were explaining in the post. What's people's thoughts on this?
When I had a discussion with someone who's ADHD, I realised I was ADHD as well, currently in the waiting list to be assessed. But the traits he described filled in the gaps that didn't fit my autism diagnosis.
An autistic friend and I were discussing this weekend, posture and pelvic conditions. So that's kind of been on my mind.
What I like about posts like this, when it talks about co-occurring conditions and saying it's not extra labels, it's basically saying it's about your identity, who you are, and how you're made up in terms of how you think, how you go about your life, and the reason why. And I think, even though, as we know about, society's kind of pushing a lot against it, and that's what we're talking about, the kind of toxic stuff and all that, there is a sort of movement about individuality, about identity, who you are and what you're made up of. And I like this sort of thing, that it gives this kind of positive vibe. And there'll be many people that this will relate to. I mean, I'm unsure myself about if I've got any other co-occurring conditions. I've never kind of looked into it. I'm not too bothered about it. The autism thing kind of suits me. And if it does come across that I do go that way, I will make sure in my head it will be a positive kind of mindset, and not just like, oh no, not something else wrong with me as well, sort of thing. And that's the sort of attitude that I would have had many years ago. So it's very interesting. It's like character traits and things like that. It's not just about what is wrong, although that may be looked upon in certain ways in certain aspects. It's just about who you are as a person, and it's good to kind of break down that. It's like autism is different in everyone anyway, but as well as being autistic, you may be a bit of this, a bit of that as well, and that doesn't mean it's labelling, saying that you've got a kind of medical condition to put you down. It's just putting a sort of kind of individual sort of identity.
Did anybody ever get called a hypochondriac?
Yes, because people would say to me, "How are you today?" And I would just turn around and say, "Well, my back's been playing up, or I've got a bit of a ache in my arm." And if you ask me, "How are you today?" that's what I'm going to respond. I'll tell you with, "Oh, I had a bit of a headache," or "I, whatever." And that's how I would answer. And then one day someone called me a hypochondriac, and I absolutely hit the roof.
That's an interesting one, because what people are actually expecting you to say automatically is fine. How are you today? You're supposed to say, oh, good, or not too bad. It's like if you actually give an answer, which sometimes can be an autistic thing to do, and not the wrong thing to do. It's not wrong. It's like people are kind of taken aback a bit.
Well, the neurotypical social rule is about saying you're fine whether you are or not.
That as well, yes.
Yeah, I shocked someone once when they said, "How are you today?" And I said, "Well, my urine's gone bright orange." And actually, someone overheard and came over and said, "Sounds like you're dehydrated. Maybe you should drink some fluids." So, but you asked me, and I told you what I was like that day.
I think dehydration's a big concern. I got a nurse spotted that in me at the GP's recently when she couldn't find a vein, and she says, "You're dehydrated, mate."
This was actually the beginning of 18 months. My health went right downhill. I had the sort of ME, yuppie flu, post-viral fatigue syndrome. It was the beginning of that. It was quite a tough time, really.
The thing that's strange about this conversation and that example, and I can totally relate to it in a way. If someone asks a question and then you give them, a truthful answer, which is fair enough, is I generally do the so-called normal kind of response and just say I'm fine even though I'm not. Or maybe it depends who I'm talking to. Maybe I don't want to tell people all my ills and that anyway. But it's kind of quite amusing and quite refreshing hearing that if someone asks how they are, they actually tell them straight, and then they're offended. Not offended, but they're kind of a bit baffled of why you've told them what they think is maybe a life story or your hypochondria because you're talking about a health issue. Well, you did ask.
Sometimes I'll say, do you want the truth or what I'm supposed to say?
It's like one of those sort of job interview questions when you walk in and they say, "You found it all right then," and and you're thinking, "No, actually, I took a wrong turn here, and then I didn't get there, and there was some traffic there, and there was some roadworks there," and I used to hate that.
I'd probably be sarcastic.
Reality isn't quite what we think it is.
The next post is from Cara Keta, autistic educator, who's an educational consultant, autistic educator with a passion for helping teachers and families support autistic children. And she shared the following. My partner was telling me about how his therapist told him that he can replace should with could, and it's a wild what a shift like that does. It doesn't remove all my anxiety or self-doubt or shame or whatever, but seriously, I should take care of that first. No, I could, but I could also chill on the couch with a book for a bit. I should wake up early and get that done. I could, or I could sleep in during these final weeks of summer break. It's revolutionary. I still end up doing a lot of the should because patterns are patterns, but I'm more aware now of how much my guilt drives me, and it's a step towards freedom, I hope. What's Jules' thoughts on that?
That's a nice life hack.
Yeah, it kind of comes across. There's a lot of self-demand. I mean, I do it myself. I mean, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, but then you go, no, I could, or I can, or I've got a choice of doing it if I want to. And it does relax you a little bit if you kind of play with words and kind of try and, play with the mind a little bit to be a bit more positively kind of minded, a positive approach. It just depends how you're feeling and what you're dealing with. But I found it very interesting, just playing with words a little bit, or changing a word, or changing a letter even, to, just to kind of ease the burden, on yourself, because a lot of things is like self-demand. You must do, you have to, you should do, but no, you have a choice of doing sometimes.
It's empowering, isn't it? Giving yourself choices and options rather than feeling, obligated. Because, that's obsessed me all my life, that should obligation. You can sit there, driving yourself mad with it. And it just appears out of the blue. It's like a pattern built into you. It's like, can't I just do nothing? Why can't I just do nothing? It's just, I have to force myself to do something. I should be doing something. And it is, in a way, guilt, isn't it? And then there's shame for not fulfilling this guilt drive.
It is the same, the difference between being asked to do something and being told to do something.
Yeah, it's that compliance thing again that you talk about a lot, Robbie.
I was thinking about this other day when the sun started to really come out recently, and it was getting, the hot days came in, and I thought, oh, it's here now, the summer, and everybody was out having a good time. And I found this overwhelming should business going on in me. It was really, really unsettling. And it's like this expectation that this change in the weather, this environment, means you're supposed to be doing certain things. And it's just like I could not relax with it. And so when it got dull, I felt a lot better.
The next post is from Embrace Autism. We're a mental health service, science website and diagnostics centre. Research-based information and empowerment by autistics for autistics. Embrace your advantages. And what they've shared is about something called enhanced olfactory detection. And they say that due to enhanced connectivity between the thalamus, due to the enhanced connectivity between the thalamus and the insula, autistic people tend to experience heightened sensitivity to smell, sound, and taste. And they put it across as a common sensory strength. What's people's thoughts? Has people heard about this before? It's a new one in me.
It's something I identified with, my diagnosis gave me a kind of explanation for something that had always been happening, which is like I would get obsessed with smells and go around smelling things and try to figure out where that smell's coming from. Good and bad smells. But in this case, it's saying tend to experience heightened sensitivity to smell, sound, and taste. So it's going to go through the rest of the senses, isn't it? But the nose is a real mystery, sense-wise.
When we've talked about senses before, we've talked about negative and positive. And I always like when we talk about the positive ones, it's like the heightened sensitivity, but the heightened sort of experience, of listening to something, tasting something, smelling something, seeing something, things like colours. I mean, there's always an example that was described before as, someone in the woods and all these different colours, like in autumn or summer, and it's just a great grand experience. And knowing that only people with a heightened sensitivity that experience that, and many others would miss that. It's like we're that busy talking about, in many ways, about how noises can be distracting, how smells can be distracting. Noise especially, because of being out in busy places and how it can be really intense, and how you kind of wear like headgear to cover the ears, earphones or whatever, to block out that noise. And I experienced that, but I also experienced the sort of positive side. So that's a kind of strength that maybe the post is talking about. Just put it out there. The next post is from Laura Helfeld, Neurodivergent Nurse Consulting, which is a health and wellness website page. Hi, I'm Laura, autistic PDA and ADHD nurse and sleep consultant. Let's talk mental health and self-care. And they've shared the following. Drum roll, please. Welcome to the Education Department of Autistic Revolution. As the final department introduction, we have the Education Department led by Alice of Neurodiverse Journeys and Jenny Loughran. In the education system, where neurological differences continue to be seen as a medical problem, need to be fixed, treated or cured, we must hold space to discuss why this needs to change and ask really important questions such as, is it working? Is it supporting marginalised people into work? And if it does, is it sustainable? Are employers making their spaces accessible for everyone? How does it teach children to place healthy boundaries, promoting healthy relationships between adults and children? What are we actually teaching children about neurodiversity? And most importantly, Does the current narrative within the education system promote efficacy and well-being? And there's a full read of the introduction on Substack, which is on the link on the post. So what's people's thoughts on this post? On the article itself, in the Substack article, I'll go through the kind of introduction that hasn't been talked about already in the post that was shared. You know, what the education department looks to explore is that they'll explore all the above that was talked about in the post by talking to young people accessing education and talking to educational providers, including flexi schooling and ETOAS packages, homeschooling and deregistering. We will explore AHCP's outcomes and targets. Who will be leading this department? Alice McSweeney and Jenny Loughlin, the department guys for this magazine section, are currently educating their children through the flex schooling in EOTAS. They'll explore the mainstream education and why parents are choosing to source an alternative. So coming out in the first education edition, Alice shares her personal experience of flex schooling through Flexi Schooling UK. We will also feature Thriving Neurodivergent Practitioner Community, a glossary of neurodivergent affirming practitioners for people seeking an alternative lens. What else will offer educational opportunities for frontline services such as the police, social services and the NHS. We'll explore what happens when frontline services are not given the right educational training to support neurodivergent people. So what's people's thoughts on what's been read so far?
This seems to me like a big deal, and anything we can do to encourage that, it seems like a good thing. Let's just keep sharing the work and looking at it, commenting on it, and doing what we can do to make people aware of this.
The next post is from Tanya Valentin, Neuro-Affirming Family Coach, who's a personal coach who gives compassionate guidance for parents of neurodivergent children and teens navigating autistic burnout. Join our parent community from burnout to balance. And what the post says, they've shared a presentation, but the supporting text says, it's called, Will my high-masking autistic child ever recover from burnout and function like they used to? If you've asked this, you're not alone. But here's the thing no one tells us. What we called functioning before the burnout was often survival. It was masking, people-pleasing, coping at a cost. And that version of functioning led to the crash. Burnout isn't something our kids bounce back from by pushing harder. It's something they slowly heal from when we stop asking them to pretend they're okay. The goal isn't to go back. It's to move forward into a life that feels safe, sustainable, and authentic for your child. And it's a workshop, a free workshop called Why Burnout Recovery is Taking So Long and What We Can Do About It. And there's links provided. What's people's thoughts so far?
This is something that doesn't run on a timetable. It's you can't say I will be this much better on this much day. It's time and patience, and it can be a long time, a long time.
The presentation itself follows the same lines. And it says, it's a parent question. Will my high-masking autistic child ever recover from burnout and function like they used to? And it says, a gentle truth. What we often call functioning was actually masking. Pushing through, hiding needs, performing for acceptance. This functioning is what caused the burnout. Burnout is a crash after chronic stress. Your child wasn't thriving before, they were surviving. To go back would mean returning to the same cycle that overwhelmed their nervous system. The real question isn't will they go back? It's what kind of life can we build now? One that honours their limits, meets their needs, and helps them heal. Burnout recovery isn't linear. It's often slow, confusing, and often takes way longer than anyone expects. But that doesn't mean your child is broken. If you're asking, why is this taking so long? Are we doing something wrong? Will they ever feel okay again? You're not alone, and there are answers. And there's information on the free workshop that discusses this topic. What's your thoughts? This is a sort of thing that's looking to change the narrative, because there's so much stress, in children and in their parents, and how situations such as burnout come across. Because I've experienced it. In fact, I think that's what happened to me in school in many ways. It was burnout, it was like I crashed. So it's like the narrative saying, like, you're not broken. Your child's not broken. You're not broken. You're not doing anything wrong. It's about education and guidance and giving information and providing a more positive narrative and understanding. Because the life that we kind of live in, the society that we live in, everything needs to be done in a rush. So if you have a setback, there's this sort of demand, sometimes even within yourself, to recover quickly. And this is basically saying you can't expect that. You've got to sometimes realise that things take time and patience. And I don't think this is actually said often enough. People are always in a rush for things to happen now, because many things do happen now. But a lot of the time things do happen now is people actually burn themselves out and make themselves ill to do so.
The scenario the post brings to me is of a parent whose first experience of their child as an autistic person is when they burn out, and that's the first time they come to realise that what the child has been doing has been masking their way through, high masking, and that has taken a toll that has led to a crisis. What that parent needs to do is to let themselves off the hook on the guilt of that. They didn't understand what they were doing that contributed in any way towards this, but now it's a great opportunity with this huge bit of information to work together to go on a journey and be led by your child on the understanding of autism. Be careful not to impose a version of autism on your child. I think your child is the person, whether they be quite young or a teenager, to take you along a journey as much as it is for you to show the care and understanding that a parent needs to show.
Well, thanks everybody for tonight. That's us come to the end of the broadcast. It was once again great conversation and great topics shared. And thanks for all the people that shared these posts for us to talk about tonight. You know, it was very informative and always follows a positive theme, you know, towards the end. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 20th of July 2025, which is part of Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is on every Sunday between 5:55 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time on Facebook Live, on YouTube and other platforms. So thank you once again, and now I'll hand over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for the work that you've done there. And yeah, great conversations from that. Every week we have a very public, open meeting deciding how we're going to go forward with Autistic Association, the charity, and also Autistic Radio. This week, the conversation between us is very much about our upcoming activity, cooperating with professionals.